Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Mindfulness Mondays. I'm super sweaty. I just came back from a walk. It's been kind of my plan over the past month or so to try to do 3 to 5K walk every morning. I'm experiencing a new love affair with walking, especially in this time of year. The weather is beautiful here and the trees are still changing and it's really magical. And I live really close to the water, so I like to go down by the water and meditate. So I'm enjoying movement for the sake of movement. I'm really loving movement as a what do I want to call it, as a vehicle for body maintenance, as a vehicle to feel good. And it's kind of lovely because for the most part, my whole life, exercise and movement has been a function of punishment for a body that doesn't conform, or a punishment for eating something that I enjoyed. So it's really nice to do movement for the sake of doing movement and not have any values placed on that movement. Just go out there and feel good in my body. So this is part of my practice and part of my yoga practice. Then I come home and do a whole bunch of hip openers because I get stiff really quickly. So my Mindfulness Monday today is a little bit of a rant. I find that the closer I get to kind of navigating through my Graves' disease, there's some personality changes that I've noticed. It was funny when the endocrinologist was talking to me about my occupation or what I did for a living, and I told him, I do yoga, and he was like, "Oh, are you calm all the time?" And I'm like, no. My yoga doesn't make me calm all the time. It helps me figure it out sometimes, but it also gets me riled up around causes that mean a lot to me. And I hope it, for the most part, makes me really conscious. So I'm always in self-study of myself and my surroundings, and I've had something going on for a while that's kind of a little bit gotten under my skin, and I noticed it came up for me again quite recently. So for most of my life, I have been like either the only Black person or one of the only Black people, either in my school or whatever I'm participating in. It's usually just me as a person of color, which sometimes feels very uncomfortable and unsafe. I sometimes just try to avoid social situations where I'm going to be the only person of color or the only minority, because I become this fascination or curiosity for a lot of people. And that happens quite frequently, and it sometimes happens with people that I know. I have some friends who are super curious about my culture. So every time we get together, there's a question about my hair, there's a question about my skin tone, there's a question about my parents, there's a question about what it means to be Black. And sometimes I just fucking don't feel like talking about it. Do you know what I mean? I talk about it here on my channel. I write about it ad nauseum. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of outlets out there that talk about it. There's a lot of people of color who talk about what it feels like. There's a really great snippet that is called Decoded on MTV, and you can catch it on YouTube. And she breaks down a lot of misconceptions, a lot of questions, a lot of things that people think are innocent questions, but are actually microaggressions against people who are different than you. So I have always been, so to speak, the live Wikipedia for the people around me who are not familiar or not exposed to or don't have any other or whatever friends of color, so they can ask me questions. And sometimes I'm okay with it, but I'm getting to a point in my life where I'm just kind of tired of answering everybody's simple questions. It's just a simple question. I'm just really curious. I understand that you're curious and this is a simple question, but when you constantly get asked these simple questions day in and day out, it just gets to be annoying. I get my hair twisted because it's a protective style and I can put highlights in it, and I just friggin' love it. I do my hair like this because I love it. I don't do it for any kind of particular attention. I don't mind if you come up to me and you think it's pretty or whatever and you tell me that, but please don't touch me. Please. And also, I'm tired of answering the question, how long did it take? This particular time, it took 7 hours. Sometimes it takes 6, sometimes it takes 9. It depends on what's going on. It depends on how then I get the twist or whatever. But this is a question I have to answer sometimes 4 times a day, and I'm kind of over it. Like, I just, you can go on Google and YouTube and look up a lot of these questions. Like, I just know that people have a natural curiosity. But when I say to you that I'm kind of tired of constantly talking about my color and culture, don't get defensive about it. Notice that I've been triggered and take a minute to step back and say, if I were constantly asked the same question over and over and over and over and over again, several times a day, several times a week, for 40 plus years, maybe I don't want to talk about it anymore. Or maybe this is a question I don't need to know. Or maybe I can just go on Google and look it up. Like, stuff that just is annoying. And it's so interesting to me how defensive and upset people get about it when I say, I just don't want to answer that question, or I get triggered and I say whatever I say to them. So in my practice of dealing with people who are different from me, which is usually mostly everybody, I want to be really conscious of when and why I ask questions, and not just for my own curiosity. So a few years ago, when I owned a yoga studio, I hired a woman of Muslim heritage. First of all, in the interview, I kind of figured in my heart that lots of people weren't going to be hiring her because she was covered. And I kind of thought, that's the kind of feeling I got. It didn't come up in the conversation. I didn't ask because I know better than to ask those questions and make people feel any more alienated or singled out than they already do. But I thought to myself, as an oppressed, marginalized group of people, I can support that because I understand what that feels like. So, and not only that, she was the best candidate for the job. And I hired her to see what would happen in my studio. And to my relief and excitement, there was nothing. Like, I'm getting my furnace fixed, so you might hear background noise. There was no kind of anything happened. Everybody embraced her exactly who she was, and I was so thankful for that to happen. I kind of knew the people who practiced at our studio were amazing, awesome people, and I knew that's how the reaction would go, but I also wanted to be very careful about my own curiosity in asking her questions, that I didn't make assumptions and I didn't ask questions that made her uncomfortable, and I also made sure that I was okay if she didn't want to answer the question for me, or if she felt uncomfortable. And I said to her, I want this to be safe. I'm just very curious, and if you don't want to do it or you don't want to answer my questions, you don't have to, and I'll figure it out on my own. So I'm just putting it out there for you to consider and think about, that your innocent questions about people's culture, skin tone, habits, sometimes just come across as new ways to divide us, ways to focus on the things about us that are different, and that your curiosity or your simple questions outweighs my feelings to not want to answer them. And that somehow it's my fault when I speak up and I don't want to talk about what it is you want to talk about, because sometimes I'm just tired of talking about race and culture because it comes up for me every single day. And if you are in the dominant majority culture, it doesn't come up for you every single day. So you might be okay with answering the question when it comes up, but it has a different context for you than it does for me. And I know even the most well-meaning, socially conscious people have moments of bias and misunderstanding and make mistakes and step in it. So if you've triggered someone, instead of getting defensive, maybe take a step back and actually hear what they're saying instead of going, it's a simple question, blah, 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 because that never helps, right? It actually alienates people more. So it happens to me with almost every friend I have. At some point during our friendship, there's a question out of curiosity they want to ask. And sometimes I'm in a space to be okay to answer it. And other times, it was the 6th time I've had this question this week and I don't feel like dealing with you. I'm hoping that, hanging out with our friendships, we can focus on something else other than the differences between us and our cultural differences, that we can just hang out and maybe embrace the things about us that are the same or similar. So this was my thought, and this is what I think about when I use my yoga to navigate my world. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, or maybe pause and take a second to maybe review when this has maybe happened to you, or you've participated in that, and what your conversation was and what your reaction was. Okay, that was my very long Mindfulness Monday, and I'll see you on the interwebs. Namaste.